Hey everyone, today we're going to look at how to model a vehicle wheel in Maya. I will cover more hard surface modeling techniques like topology and edge flow, and show an efficient workflow on how to combine mirroring and radial symmetry that'll save you time when modeling your own wheels in Maya, or similar 3D softwares. I will be focusing on the wheel rim, and I'll cover tire tread, lug nuts, and valve stems in a later tutorial. So with that, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in Maya. And the first thing that we want to do is set up our reference images. All right. So you can see here, I have a few images of the wheel that I'll be modeling. Now, honestly, the wheel doesn't really matter, but if you're interested in this specific wheel, it's a Porsche 911 Carrera Classic wheel. All right. And you can see that I have some nice front reference, another front reference, and more importantly, I have some reference here that kind of shows what the wheel looks like at an angle. Okay, you can of course just do some searching online and look for the Porsche Carrera Classic wheel or any wheel, and basically every automotive OEM is gonna have all the wheels that you'd want to ever model, right? So, and they'll have some nice renderings of it, and most of the time there'll be nice front shots. Sometimes they'll have some perspective shots. All right, so gather your reference, and then we can start setting that up inside of Maya. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the front view, and we're going to set up our image plane. So I'm going to jump to front view, go to view here, image plane, and then I'm going to import image. All right, then I'm going to jump to where I have the image here, which is just this front view here, and then hit open. All right, now we can see that it loads in fine and everything's great, but I want to make sure right out of the gate, I'm modeling this thing to scale, right? Because if I wanted to model the rest of the car, I'm going to want to use real world dimensions. All right, now just in case you're not sure, if you go to Windows, Setting Preferences, and then Preferences, you'll see under Settings that Maya is set the working units to centimeters, and you can keep that. And then we want to create a wheel using centimeters. All right. Now this wheel here is a 21-inch rim. Okay, so I'm going to use that as the guide to create the size. So I'm going to create a cylinder first, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, and we can see clearly that this is a radius of 1. So if I want to convert this over to a 21-inch diameter wheel, I'm going to have to convert a couple of units here, okay? So we can always use, of course, Google here, and we can simply type in 21 inches to centimeters, all right? And we're going to get 53.4. Now, keep in mind, this is the diameter of the wheel. So if we want the radius, we want to take half of this, all right? So we want to take 53.34 and divide that by half, which is going to be 26.67. So I'm going to type that in right here. And again, the radius of a 26.67 is a 21-inch diameter wheel, all right? So I'm doing this now. If I want to go ahead and scale this up, okay, I want to scale this up to about the size of this wheel. Okay, so I'll go ahead and turn on X-ray here, and then turn on wireframe on shaded, and then I'm going to go ahead and scale this up. Now keep in mind that does not include the tire sidewall, so you want to make sure to select your image plane and really scale this up to the outer diameter of this wheel rim. Okay, so now that we have that, we have a nice proper scale. And what I can do is give this just a little bit more height, because I'm actually going to use this for some modeling. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is pay attention to the spokes of the wheel. Okay, that's probably the next most important thing, or if not the most important. We can see that this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spoke wheel. So what we're then going to want to do is create this using radial symmetry based off of the 5-spoke wheel. Okay, now what I then want to do is, instead of using this portion of the wheel here, all right, using this portion, I'm going to rotate this image actually 180 degrees. All right, you'll see why I'm going to do this in a second. All right, so I rotate this 180 degrees. And then now I have this part of the wheel that I'm going to be modeling off of instead of kind of the more complicated version here. And the whole reason is because when I do the radial symmetry, it's going to be a lot easier to do it on this slice of the pie. For example, I'm talking about this right here. So we're going to take that and do radial symmetry with it. Okay. Now, I said this is a 5-spoke wheel. So then I want to take this and, as you saw, 20 segments here. Okay, hopefully I'm not getting too complicated, but 20 subdivisions divided by 5 is 4. So that means that I'm going to need 4 of these segments here. And this is where the radial symmetry is going to happen, right about here. Okay, now I am going to go ahead and give myself 40, just so it's a little bit rounder here. And then I'm going to use this now, and you can see that I could select 8 here. So I have the 8 faces you can see selected here. All right, this is going to be the slice of the pie that I'm going to be modeling off of. Okay, so with all of that, we're ready to start modeling. Okay, so all of that was just to prepare, and it's going to save us a ton of time down the road. All right, now on to the modeling. So what I'm going to do now is take this cylinder here and just create this as our live surface, and I'm going to use Quadra. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do now is select a cylinder and turn it into a live surface, and I'm going to zoom out here, and now you can see that since I created this cylinder as the live surface, I can begin quad drawing on top of it. So I can go to Quad Draw here, and now I can create and start to use this tool to do whatever I want. And you can see that it's on here. Now I don't use the plane because the image plane is a reference image plane. But what I actually want to do is now jump to the front view and plan and work on our topology here. Okay, so again, I have the cylinder as the quad draw surface or the live surface, and now I can start. All right, now whenever it comes to wheel modeling, I've modeled a lot of wheels, right? I've been working in the automotive industry for quite a while. The main thing that you want to do right out the gate is to focus on the most complicated edge loops of the model. Okay, so instead of just kind of going in and doing the larger surfaces, I'm just going through and doing the going ahead and doing the main topology here. Okay, now just to make sure, if you haven't used Quad Draw before, all I'm simply doing is left clicking to create the dots and then holding shift to create the face. Okay, now you can also hold control to add an edge loop, or use tab to extrude edges, but that's essentially what I'm doing here. And if you go down here to the bottom, you can see that there are keyboard shortcuts on how to use Quad Draw. We're not going to do a crazy amount here with it. We're just going to use this for the initial topology and then keep moving forward. Okay, so we're just left clicking, shift click, left click, shift left click. Okay, and here's a tip that I always recommend is whenever you have corners like these, always at least use a 1, 2, 3 edge radius here. Okay, or segment edge here. Okay, and that's going to help hold that corner instead of doing, you know, something like this where you have like just like 2 here. Okay, so that should help. Now, of course, we have this all set up. I'm using this edge here as my line of symmetry, and I'm only modeling half. So I'm modeling half of the pie here, and then I'll do a mirror symmetry, and then we'll do radial symmetry, and we'll have the wheel pretty much modeled here in no time. Okay, so again, kind of keeping to what I said at the bottom, keep this nice 3 edge radius here to kind of hold these corners. All right. And I'd say I'll probably add one more here, just kind of hold this here. All right, we get something like this. And then what I want to do is continue on with this edge loop here. So you'll see that I want to continue and add this. And this one's going to be a little bit tighter just because there's a lot more happening here. And go ahead and continue to move that. All right, and I'll go ahead and continue and just hold tab left click, and I'm going to get this to right about here. Remember, I said I wanted the 8 faces, the 4 and half of that, which is the 4 faces, and we can go ahead and do move that here. And this will give us a nice, clean, perfect symmetry here. All right. And we're going to just, again, use this as a guide. We're going to stay pretty close to this reference here, but I'm not too worried about that. This is the overall workflow that I use for modeling wheels. All right. All right, cool. So we have this here now. Probably going to add one more. And there, we got the main edge flow here for our wheel. All right. And if we wanted to, I would say I'm going to probably add in another couple edges here for to help with the curvature, hold that curvature for the rim. All right, so there, so we did all that, and now we're here on the outside. Now, there's one thing that you need to keep in mind. I'm actually going to go ahead now, and I feel like I'm done with the cylinder, so I'm going to disable live, and we're just going to hide the cylinder for right now. Okay, so here we are with this part. A lot of times I see people take this now, and they'll take the edge loops and then extrude these back. Now, before you do that, you want to pay attention to our reference. And if you take a look at our reference, it's really, really hard to tell. You can kind of see it's kind of alluding that it's curving inwards, but that's why I pulled this image, because you can see this, it is really quite a bit curving inwards as it's going in towards the center. So before we add or complicate the geometry any further than this, you want to make sure to do that with the geometry here. Okay, so what I mean is to select this kind of from the side. Actually, let's just go to the side view here, and we can kind of see what we have selected here, and just kind of start moving this in. Okay, and this is going to help give us that curvature that we were looking for here. Okay, and we can even move this out a bit. All right, so now we're kind of going off that flat surface, and this is really going to help with the overall form. So you can see this is essentially kind of that profile, and then as it gets down towards the bottom, it starts to flatten out and even kind of curves all the way up until you get to the center cap here. Okay, and I would say even these right here are going to come out a bit like this. Okay, so we're going to have this for the curvature, and then we can kind of play with that once we get that. Okay, so so we have this, which is probably the most complicated part. Then what we're going to want to do is take this now, this inner edge loop here, and hold shift and move. Okay, grab your move tool, hold shift and move it back. Again, we're going to double click. I'm going to select this edge, double click, hold control shift, and then we select this edge loop, hold shift, move it back. All right, and then I'm going to take these edges on the inside now and just kind of, again, using our reference here, scale these in. All right, now you can use scale or you can use normal to normal move. So you can grab your move tool and hold control and middle mouse. So I kind of like that a little bit, and then once you kind of move that on the normal like that, then you can scale that in a little bit, maybe use a combination of both of those workflows. Okay, once I get that, I'm going to just kind of get this back on the line of symmetry here, which is right about here. Scale that in, and we're gonna just use this to position it based off of our reference. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do this like so, and just matching it the best that we can. All right, got that, and this vertex here. Oh, great. So that's looking good there. I won't spend too much time with the vertices, but you get the idea. We're going to do the same exact thing here. Okay, and I'm going to hold. Now I'm actually going to go to basically right about here. So I'm going to select this edge here and go to the bottom edge here. Select Control Shift, double click, and now I'm going to, again, we can do, instead of a move, shift move, we can do scale move. So I'm going to hold shift and uniformly scale. You can see we're kind of edge copying that now towards the center. All right, this is a little bit more complicated towards the top there, but we're gonna work on that a little bit later. And you can see that now I'm just grabbing and moving these vertices like this, okay? So we kind of have something like here, and let's go ahead and move some of these vertices to get something like this. All right, so we're just going to kind of moving these down to basically right about this main part right here, right? We can kind of see this extra divot here, and we'll select these vertices here like so. Control Shift Select, and kind of bring this down. All right, so so you can kind of see what we have going on here, and we can tell that this goes in quite a bit deeper, so we can move these in quite further back. So I'd want to keep it pretty much even with these two, right? I'm going to keep this even. All right, and we can actually Control Select both of these, and then we can do like a scale to maybe even those out a little bit, but I'm going to keep a little bit of that natural curvature that we had from our geometry, or from that edge flow that we extruded back from. Okay, so we have that, and now I'm going to kind of come back here to the bottom and kind of finish this edge flow, or this area over here. So what I want to do is keep this vertice right here about the center, and we're going to take these edges here and we're going to edge copy these down. So we're just going to hold Shift and move, and move these based off the reference here. And remember, we're keeping it, if you can look at our cylinder, the piece of this pie, this is the line, this is this magic line. That is our line of symmetry, or radial symmetry. So we're going to use that kind of as the guide here for the middle, okay? And if it gets a little bit too, have them on top of each other, I'll just make this and call this my ref layer. Just Control G to group, and then I can go to display here and create a layer, and I can just call this ref layer, okay? Ref layer, and then we can set this to freeze. So that way we're not accidentally selecting the cylinder, but at the same time we can keep it here visible as our reference, okay? Great, so I'm going back to vertex mode and using this line as our line of symmetry, and we have something like this here, and we can see that we need a nice edge loop that kind of runs around and goes towards the bottom here. So I'm going to take this area here, and actually maybe I'll put this back just a little bit, and I will take these two, then Shift copy, move these over. Okay, we're going to clean this up here in a second, but this is going to give us the geometry that we need. All right, and I'm going to copy, just kind of put these pretty much right on the center here, and you can see now we have the geometry that we need for this curved, this extruded back area. All right, and I'm just going to move these back like so, and about here, and then on this part you can see that we kind of have this step progression here. So if I go back over here, and I'm actually going to hide that specifically this cylinder, and we can see that we're going to have kind of this kind of cut down. So I'm going to need to definitely add some more geometry here. All right, so what I'm going to do is fix this area here to keep it nice and consistent. So it's going to kind of curve back a little, kind of like this, and we're just going to bring these areas, because once we get to this part here, the cap completely flattens out. So we're just going to take this now and just flatten this out like so, and bring these back out like this, okay? And so it's going to flatten out, and then of course we're going to bring these, I'm going to hold Control Shift now, middle mouse, and just kind of bring these over. Okay, so we have something like this, and hold Control Shift, bringing that back in. So I'm using an edge slide to kind of help that area there. All right, and you can see I'll bring this back just so it's a little bit more gradual. Okay, and you can see kind of, again, kind of that extrusion. So what I want to do is hold Shift right click and grab our multi-cut tool. All right, now I want to add an edge that runs all the way around, but I don't want it to run all the way down this way. So this is where I'm going to cut in actually right about here to reroute our edge flow. So you see that? So it's going to kind of go now like this on this. Then I'm going to cut this here and connect these two vertices. Then I'm going to take this edge, and you can see that we're left with an n-gon and a triangle. Whenever you have that, you just take this, or we're rerouting this edge, and we're just going to collapse and merge that to center. So then we get something like this. We get this nice edge that runs all the way around for this face loop. Okay, so we have that, and I'm gonna jump to the front view again so we can kind of see what's going on. And I'm gonna move these back a little bit here. Got this one that's on our line of symmetry. Just move that back. Okay, so we have this. All right, now that we have that, we can go ahead and take a look at, again, kind of just adding this stepped area here without making it too complicated. Okay, so what I want to do, we can see that this part here kind of has this stepped part going here. So I'm going to shift move that, all right, something like this. And we can see that this one here might be a little bit hard to see if we're too zoomed in. This edge here actually comes in, or comes forward, I should say. So this kind of coming forward, this going back, and then we have this edge here going down like this. All right, so you can start to see what we're starting to get here. And what I'm going to do is actually delete some of these vertices here, or sorry, faces here, and we're going to go connect that later. And we're going to move this forward. So, and we can have here, that's coming forward, that's going back, and that's going down. All right, so that's what's giving us that lip here. And yeah, that looks about right here. And what I can do is, this is kind of flat. This is the flat area. I'm actually going to delete this edge here. And instead, I'm going to use a, or go to vertice and target weld. Target weld by holding Control Shift, move that there. That'll give us, and then move this. And we have that. And what I'm going to do is make these, again, a little bit flatter. Flat. Faces, same thing here. Nice flat. And once we got that, I think we'll do that. And then now we can merge these vertices back to what we have here. So I'm going to go back to target weld and merge these vertices. And if this seems a little bit odd or a little bit weird, and yours doesn't have that, you can skip to this part. I'm just kind of showing how I would handle this more complicated portion here on the wheel. It's just some reworking some edges. I did find that basically this feature was on almost all Porsche wheels, so it's definitely something I at least wanted to cover. Okay, so there. That's a little bit cleaned up now and have things set up properly. And I will bring this back to our radial line of symmetry here. So a little bit of cleanup there. Bring that cylinder back. And we're going to keep this. All right. So I think this is about right. Okay. And just a little bit of cleanup there. Now, if you have kind of zigzaggy edges, what I recommend is just kind of using multi-cut, and you can just kind of cut down to make nice straight lines like this. And then once you have that, you can get rid of these little kind of janky lines there and control backspace, and there you go. You have nice clean lines just by using this multi-cut, just from clicking from the beginning edge to the last. Okay. a really nice, easy way to clean up crooked edges. All right, so there we have that. All right, so here we are, and then now we kind of got those nice divots, but we got this big old hole here. And what I want to do is just take these two edges here and go ahead and do a bridge. And then we're left with this triangle, and we can easily remedy that triangle by cutting it across here. Okay, and what I want to do first is clean up and get some nice clean edges here. So this down a bit too. Here, these vertices, and just kind of match it pretty close. Again, I'm not going for 100% perfect, but I think we're good here. And good, it's planar. What I will then do is just grab my multi-cut, and I will cut from here. I'll just cut that straight across. I'm adding this nice edge as a holding line, which we're going to need anyways. There, and we can remove this face here entirely, or this triangle, and select this edge and grab shift right click and do a fill hole. All right, so here's some use a bunch of different modeling tools here today. So that gives us what we need. And if we take a look here from the front, things are looking pretty good. Probably just kind of move this, but I think we're okay. All right, and so now what I'm going to do is assign I'm going to hold right click and then just assign favorite material and assign a Phong. Okay, so now we have a Phong material, and we can kind of see the overall form that we have here. All right, so if I hold 3, we can kind of see how it's looking, and it's looking pretty good. And we can see that these edges here are a little bit close together. So what I'm going to do is kind of space these out. Remember, always go for that even distribution of edges, and do a little bit of cleanup here. And I'm just going to do that by simply grabbing these edges here and control backspacing to delete. Control backspace to delete, and that's going to help flatten that area out. And actually, I'm going to do these to these areas here. So I'm going to get a nice flat surface here. What I can then do now that it's nice and flat is just grab my multi-cut tool and just cut on this flat surface, which will give me the here to this inner edge here. And we're just making sure that we're connecting it to the same edges that we deleted. All right, so we're good there, and then we'll space that out. Okay, so I think we're good. And it's definitely showing the importance of topology and edge flow when it comes to modeling something, I would say, that's a combination of being hard surface and organic, like a wheel. All right, so you can see we have this area, which is nice, this nice flat surface here, which I think is good enough for now. And we have this that's kind of running across. Now, what I want to do is, now that we have that, we definitely need to look at a reference and take a look, and you can see, I mean, this was all painted as one color, but if we wanted to take a look and see how to do this as two-tone, or with painted pockets, we certainly can. And all we really need to do is just add these nice, these holding lines here, okay? Now, what you could do really is just select these edges like so, here. And I'll grab this edge here because this face here. And remember, it's going to run based off of our reference here like this. Actually, what I'm going to do is just go back and hide our cylinder. Back to edge mode, and we still have our edge selection. And actually, what I need to do is extrude this back, this lip back, okay? So I'm going to hold shift and extrude that back. So we're starting to get that that lip there, okay? And And then actually, before I put those holding lines in there, I need to add some more geometry around this portion. So I'm going to go in and let's see what edge flow does. So multi-cut, edge flow, add it right in the middle, and it does okay. Kind of messes up right around this area where these edges are getting a little bit too close to each other. So a little bit of cleanup is needed, but overall, I like what it does. It's definitely the kind of curving inwards and moving it on the normal. So that's definitely something that we want to do. I'm going to actually move this up. I'm using edge slide, Control Shift, edge slide. We're going to go here and do this part. Okay. And I'm going to grab these edges here, these vertices here, Control Shift slide towards the center. Because we're going to actually have to add in this bolt here. Or sorry, these lug nuts. So we can see kind of what we have going on, which is why I switched to a Fong, so we can see these highlights, and things are looking pretty good, all in all. And we're having that nice detail there. We can see a nice detail here. And what I'm going to do is clean up this area, this, like so. I'm going to add in one more multi-cut tool. So multi-cut and enable edge flow again, and we're going to add that right in the middle. Okay, now you can see we have that, and clean this area up. This is specifically the problem area, and doing a little bit of edge slide. And if I zoom in on it here, you can see we can also just fix it from the front view. Okay, something like this. That'll be good and gives us what we need. And I'm going to space these out just a bit using Control Shift to edge slide, of course. And I need to make sure I give myself enough room to cut the lug nut hole. So you can see this. And this is going to kind of come basically dead center here. Okay, and let me see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. So I'm going to move this up a bit here, and that's going to give us one. What I'm going to do is cut this here. This is going to be the hole for the lug nut, and I'm going to cut this in like so. And what I'm going to do is essentially it's like doing an extrusion. I'm cutting it there. Oh, whoops. Let me redo that again, but this time without edge flow, because I forgot that that'll maintain. Right now I want it to be flat. And we're just going to cut that across like this. All right, so we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 edges. So 16. So what I typically do at this point is grab a cylinder. So I'll shift right click with nothing selected and grab a 16-sided cylinder. And this is going to help me maintain this nice area here. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And this is going to be what I'm going to use to help me just plan that topology here for this lug nut hole. And if I just, kind of line these edges up, grab these, over. What I'm going to do is actually make sure that I do that on my entire line of symmetry. So this is our mirror line of symmetry. Scale these over, and we can use V and use this vertex here. Oh, don't forget that there's that vertice that we extruded back. All right, cool. So we got this, scale, and then hold V to vertex snap, and then you can snap it to this vertice right over here. Okay, looks like we're good. And now I can hide the main cylinder, and we're going to use this as the guide. Now, that I have this, I'm just going to edge slide this, and you can kind of see what I have going on here. Center. This piece. And we're just moving these vertices into position. We're gonna have to make some adjustments. And we're just edge sliding. And again, I'm just using this cylinder to help with the guide for this extrusion. You can see that I do have to move some of the around. And I'm gonna move this. All right, now we're getting a little bit messy here. Well, isolate, you can see kind of what's happening here. So there are a couple things that we can do. And we can just kind of edge slide these so they're not so stretched out. And we'll see if that'll kind of give us the detail that we need. Because what we're going to do is we're going to scale this or extrude this back. Okay. So I'm going to do it like this. And grab these, scale. All right. So we're just using this. What I want to do now is grab these faces. We'll fix up the area or the topology. The smooth second. Gonna. Oh, I had the wrong vertex here. All right. So now that we got that, I'm gonna move that back. Just hold Shift or Control E, and just move that back. And this is kind of our lug nut hole now. Right. So now that hopefully that makes a little bit more sense as to what we're trying to do, and scale this. We can look and hold a smooth preview with 3, and we can see what's going on. All right, and we can kind of ease the topology a little bit and move some things to kind of help in this area. Okay, so a little bit of vertex manipulation, but that should give us everything that we need. I think this is good for now. And if you wanted to, you can spread out these edges a little bit more. So here, this is getting a little bit tight. So what I would want to do is grab these edges here, hold Control Shift, and just space these out like so. And do the same thing with this next set of edges, Control Shift, edge slide. And then we have a little bit more room to work with. And if you wanted to, you can multi-cut with edge flow. And Control Shift and add that right in the middle, and that'll help this area here, so we get something that looks a little bit cleaner here. All right, and if we hold 3, smooth preview, that's looking pretty good here. And we can of course add some holding edges here in just a second. All right, so we got this portion, the lug nut. Now I'll go ahead while I'm here, disable edge flow. And just kind of add in the holding lines that we were just talking about while we're here, so we don't forget. Using edge slide to move in edge. And I don't want this to be nearly as tight. And actually, if you look at the reference, it's not nearly as tight. It's a little bit softer. So what I'll actually do is just multi-cut and just add one right in the middle here. Add one towards the end. Okay, so that gives us something like that. I'm thinking I may actually just move it and remove that one on the outside. Yeah, so that gives us a nice softer radius and still holds that form really well. Okay, and then now if we wanted to, we kind of clean up this area. So what we need to do now is go ahead and do the symmetry. Or the mirror over, and then once we do the mirror over, then we can do the radial symmetry to wrap this up. So let me go ahead now and add the holding lines here for that light metal piece. All right, and we're gonna do just a nice simple bevel, and we're gonna keep this pretty tight, 0.25, and then we're gonna add like maybe 2 segments here. All right, and this is pretty tight. This is machined metal, and this will allow us to separate this later. So if we now take a look at it, take a look at that. It's starting to look really good and look even more like the rim piece, okay? Now, we're going to fix this area over here, I can definitely tell, but it's going to be, we'd want to fix that more once we have the mirror and the symmetry, okay? So what I want to do is I would definitely duplicate this, and I'll keep this piece here just in case, right? I'll call this flip. We'll hide that, all right? So now we have this, and from here, I'll delete history. And what I want to do is our line of symmetry should be good, right? So we need to mirror this over this, all right? And I'm going to hold shift right click and just do a mirror. Grab the settings actually. And, or actually you can just simply, I forgot they have kind of the mini settings now that we can just do here. All right, and it disappears, no freak out. We want to work off the x-axis. So we want to do axis, x, just in case your settings are a little bit different. Like if I reset this, this will be fine. And then I want to go to make sure this is negative x, which it is. And then we can see that we have a merge threshold of 0.003. All right. And there we go. And if I bring back that cylinder, now we can see kind of what we have here. Remember, we're going to take this cylinder here and we're going to panel box and disable this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And remember, this has 40 subdivisions, right? And so 8 times 5 is 40. And so we have a 5-spoke wheel. So that's where that's coming from. Okay. So remember, we have a 5-spoke wheel, but this is kind of like the surface area of the pie. Now we want to actually do radial symmetry. All right. So what am I going on about? Let me hide that. Grab this for our wheel. And then we want to use what's called duplicate special. Now, if you don't have that here, I have that on my shelf. You can go to edit and then hit duplicate special window. With duplicate special, I'll go ahead and just do a reset settings. And this is what it has. Okay. Key thing first that you want to do is do an instance because we want this to be a copy of one another. And then I want to do a rotation. Now we're going to be rotating this on the Z. So you can see it's rotating here. Now, how much are we rotating it? We're rotating it, right? If I pull out my calculator, right, we have a 5-spoke wheel, right? And if we divide that by 5, that's 72 degrees. Okay, so we want to rotate this by 72 degrees, and we only want 4 copies since we already have 1, so that's a total of 5. So with that, we go ahead and hit apply, and go. All right, now we're really close here, so we're going to fix that here. Just keep in mind, you wanted to make sure that you had instancing on, because guess what? Now what I can do is move these, and it's going to work throughout the rest of the wheel. Look at that, right? So really nice, really powerful way to do this. And if we go here now, you can see that we can start to space things out for our wheel here, or for our circular areas, and use this to finally finish the wheel area. Okay, now I'll bring back my cylinder here. And we'll take a look kind of at what we have. And we can see, yeah, we were a bit off here on this. And what we could be able to do is if we do world X, I believe. And if I go back here, set this back to our reference. And now with symmetry enabled, I have world X symmetry on. Look at that. I can now put these back on the line of symmetry from our radial. And this is how I do my wheels, right? And it just saves so much time when you just plan your segments out and plan your rotations out. And it all starts with how many spokes these are. So if you have a 4-spoke rim like this is a spoke, by the way, each one of these sections. So 1, 2, 3, 5, right? Each one of these sections. If you have more, you would just, divide 360 by 6 or divide the subdivisions by 6 and work from there. Okay. So this is incredibly helpful, incredibly powerful. So I'm going to just kind of use this to finish this area here. And we have that all set up. Okay. Now, one thing that I need to do is if I go to this area here, at the bottom for the wheel cap, we can see that we have 50 segments. And what I typically do at this point is I grab a cylinder. This, I'll just use the same one that I use for the lug nuts, drop this at the bottom. And I will set this to, so if I can actually translate Y0, and I'll set this to 50 segments. And I will, or subdivisions, and increase that. And I use this to really help. Now, it's getting a little bit noisy here, so I'm going to isolate these two. And look at that. Okay, and so I can use this. Now I need to make sure that it's rotated. I have the one kind of here in the center like this. So that's where it's starting from. And I can use that to help position the vertices that will give me a nice clean cylinder. All right, so we have something like this. Remember, I used 50 because that was the total after the line of symmetry, right? Now, you can hold V and just use each one of these axes, and it'll snap it exactly on this position. It's a little bit more time consuming, and it's a little bit more precise, or perfectly precise. You don't need to do this. You just gotta get pretty close. But it just keeps it nice and back. Go. All right. And the symmetry here is acting a little bit off, so I'm going to have to re-mirror it, which isn't a big deal. But I can do that right after I do this portion. Okay, again, I'm holding V and only using one axis at a time, which makes sure that these are going to be nice and even. Okay, and we can hide our ref layer here. Hide this cylinder, and there you go. Look at that. You get a nice, perfect wheel cap. And if I hide that, look at that. So that is the more ideal way to do that, and we can start to see it's basically looking really, really close to our reference. And what I want to do to wrap this up is finish up or clean up this line of symmetry here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to re-mirror and radial symmetry. And actually, before I do that, I can show you just kind of the ideal way to do this. Kind of move these a little bit past this here. Then you can grab the multi-cut tool, kind of start from this, click drag, and that'll give you it really close. Okay, and then what you can do is just delete those places, and then I can redo that. Okay, so let's see. And we can snap this now. I'm going to take these and I'm going to turn on edge faces, and I'm going to snap these vertices with V, just like so. Holding V and just snapping it, vertex snap, and go. All right, so that's going to give us that nice clean. All right, great. Should look good. If it gets a little bit off, no big deal. Just redo the radial symmetry and redo what you need to do. But there you go. You can see that pretty much aligned there. So everything's looking really good. But I think I've gone long enough. I wanted to show how to add the valve stem here. On the reference is actually really easy. It's exactly like I did the cylinder. It's exactly like I did the lug nut. So you would just go here. Now that there's no symmetry, right? You would do this at the very end anyways. Do a Control E, do an offset. A little bit smaller. Now this is where we can actually leverage the circularize components like this. And we can just do radial offset, bring that in a little bit more. And Control E, extrude that in. And this is our valve stem, right? And then I can make sure to add in some holding lines here, like so. Okay, and there you go. I mean, in the last bit there, we just added that. So I really hope this was helpful. Hopefully I didn't go too long, and hopefully you found that useful. Let me know down in the comments. Maybe if you want me to do like a time lapse and me talking over, or if you like more real-time stuff like this. Whether the case, let me know down below. Like, subscribe is always appreciated, guys, and thanks for all the shares. So keep moving on, stay safe, and thanks for watching. So I'll see you guys around.